Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to get started. So welcome. There's a couple more people who might still be slightly a few minutes late, but I'm going to start. So, welcome. A couple of words of explanation for those who have been with us before the classes. I know we've got some people who are here for the first time, so welcome. We're in this room because, based on the number of people who signed up, it was going to be just a level 2 solution room. I did turn the heat up so I can feel it starting to come through now. And you're facing me this way, but there's a screen over there for two purposes. One is that we have one person who told me at a time that they would be joining us remotely. That's something new that we're trying to consistently do so that people can't get out because they've got kids that they put to bed and they're traveling, join us remotely at my class. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to speak or ask questions, make yourself visible and unmuted at any time.
Well, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, will do. I'm going to go back on mute.
Thank you. And the other reason is that this is now a record mode, so that people who can't be part of the class in real time, but were interested in the class, will be able to pick it up from our YouTube channel. Try and get in the habit of lining those up fairly soon. So, with that, welcome everyone. This is just a mini course, although as I started to do research into this topic, after having decided it was a mini course, there's way too much material for just 2 sessions. We're going to get a little taste of a world that is somewhat in the distance, not that far back in the distance. If we were living as part of Jewish communities as little as 50, 60 years ago, certainly if we were living in Jewish communities 100 years ago, a lot of what we're talking about would still be very present in the fabric of the society of that time. But what's really the interesting piece, which we'll touch on in a couple of examples this week, but more so when we gather again, and it was pointed out that there's a mistake in this week's weekly. We're not gathering next Thursday. It is the Thursday after that. There is a 1-week gap in between these 2 parts because I will be at the biennial convention next week, so I won't be around. So 2 weeks from now is when we have this in part 2. Then we'll get to some of the things that are very much part of the fabric of Jewish ritual and life today, and make some connections with some of their superstitious origins. So, with that, we'll just do a quick round of introductions. I want to keep it brief, but as you introduce yourself, if there is something that you associate as a superstition, and if you were Jewish and are familiar with Jewish superstitions, briefly mention one of those. And if you come from a different background and have something else that you sort of remember growing up with, like this was a very strong superstition in my household, feel free to share that. One of the things I've discovered is that most of the superstitions we're going to be talking about have their origins in the broader cultures in which we lived. So a lot of our superstitions are shared with that of other cultures. So we'll get a taste of that. But let's just go around and do a quick round of introductions. So, let's start over here. Name and Any superstitions you were familiar with? Just one. If you have more than one, just one.
None. Arnie Nadler.
Barbara Barry. When you say where they came from, our family had Orthodox roots 2 or 3 generations earlier, and there were many things that my mother said you should be doing or not doing, especially on the Sabbath, that there weren't really good explanations, but so as children, we viewed them as superstitions. But
They probably were.
they may have.
We'll get to Shabbat next time.
Hey, Jan Zinger, and nothing specific comes to mind.
Snowy mountain boy. The only specific I remember as a kid, never to sit never sit in the corner of the table.
Huh.
Not to get married for 10 years, something like that.
Interesting. I'm not sure if I came across that one in my research.
We didn't hear it.
As a child, I was told not to sit in the corner of the table because you would not get married for 10 years.
My home it was 7.
Oh.
The Daphna and the one I can think is Black Cat across the street.
Oh, there's a black cat across the street, bad luck. Right. Yeah.
Birthday Nathanson. Again, I don't know if it's Jewish, it's just a superstition. My mother, when she went to my father's relatives, who she didn't like that much, she wore a red, something pinned red onto her undergarments to ward off anything bad.
Yes,
Whatever.
very much a Jewish superstition from the Jewish tradition, yes. I don't know whether it originates in Judaism, but definitely one of ours. Yes, the red ribbon, the red string warding off evil spirits. But she only used it when she went to the in-laws. That's hysterical. Yeah.
I'm Elaine Solomon, and I learned this when I used to clean house for this man who was pretty frum. He wore a yarmulke in the house, and I would, work cleaning his house, and a lot of times I'd whistle. And if he was home, he was like, "Oh, you can't whistle in the house." And I got the impression it was a Jewish superstition, but I have never heard of it.
I'll look it up and do one on me as well.
Susan Starr, pull your left ear up if you sneeze and you're talking about somebody who's dead. And, if you sit in Shiva and you have a cold, you're up the creek.
Yeah, there's a lot of superstitions around death at Shiva House. We'll cover that in more depth second session. Well, welcome.
Andrea Burdick. The thing that was the most common in my family was what I came to call the Kinahura complex.
Yes, right, which is Ka'en Hora, right, basically, yes, the evil eye, warding off the evil eye.
My grandmother used to put red ribbons in my hair to ward off evil spirits.
Yeah, absolutely, that's classic. That's classic. And there's a lot of different ways that you will hear that pronounced, depending on, in one, it really would sound one way, and right, I grew up with Glaswegian Yiddish. So, yes, it took a while for me to unpack what the words were that I heard my grandmother say when she was in her. Right.
I grew up with a lot of superstitions in the house, and the one I would mention is that anytime you move to a new house, you have to have a package of bread and sugar and salt. Yeah, I can't remember what was in it, but I was afraid to throw it away.
Right, yeah, it's good luck for the house, keeping away evil spirits, especially if you're moving into a house that somebody else has lived in previously. Yes.
Michael Wallen, the same as a night.
Right.
I'm Mary Princeton, already broke with a lot of superstitions when it comes to my talking.
Yes. Yeah, that's one, absolutely.
Phil Lovett, and I'm sure it's something Jewish. I always avoid going for my other. With the Kenahora, I know my parents always like she was talking about, and Kenahora lives in this.
Clean marks, and I guess similar to what it was back there, poo, poo, poo.
Yeah, same thing, right, with free spits, yeah.
I read you a payment. I don't know if it's a superstition or my grandmother's custom, but whenever she lit Shabbat candles, she always lit 5 because it was for her, her husband, and her 3 children. And even if they should, God forbid, pass away, you still lit that number of candles. And I've carried that tradition over into my family.
So it's interesting. I actually do know the origins of that. It's a little bit, whether it's a superstition as to what would happen if you didn't do it, maybe. But there's a principle that we find in Talmud among rabbis that you increase in holiness, but you don't decrease in holiness. So once you've established a practice of I only had to have 2 candles, but I've chosen to have 5, then you're not meant to on the following week have less than that. That's actually, by the way, the reason why when we talk about why is it that for the Hanukkah menorah that we add a candle every night. You know, there's a debate between Hillel and Shammai. Shammai, these are early teachers. Shammai is the one who says, well, surely each night that the miracle lasted, there was less oil left, and so we should diminish. And Hillel says that it's the other way around, that each day that passed, the miracle got bigger. But actually, it's tied into this principle of you increase in holiness, you don't decrease. And so that's why we add the candles rather than taking one away each day. Yeah, so it's tied into that.
I'm Fran Habib, and I guess something I'm remembering is when I was a very little girl, my mom used to pin this, it was like a pointing finger made of black, I don't know, whatever it was, but I think it had something to do with the evil eye and warding it off.
Yeah, I think so. The hand, there are different versions of the hand, sometimes this way around, sometimes this way around. Very, very ancient symbol from the Middle East, and sometimes with an eye in the middle of it. Yeah, it's a protecting hand to ward off evil spirits.
I'm Stephen Petlak, and I guess one tradition that you leave the house through the same door you came in.
Yeah, that one. I don't have a good story for that one. I have heard it, but
Heidi Swan, I think my grandmother used to do that. That's what I had on my mom. She would only go out the door that she came in. I'm Cheryl Cassoff, and if you're pregnant, you shouldn't go to the cemetery.
And we will definitely cover that in a couple of sessions. By the way, I was recently talking to someone who was Native American, and they have exactly the same tradition, superstition around that.
My name is John Moore, and I was thinking that we always have to not say poor things about the dead, people who passed.
Right. Yeah.
So my one aunt gleefully did it, especially after the 3rd drink.
That's probably more about good manners than superstitions, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Kim Klein, and I still do it. You know, if you say something that you don't want to jinx or something will go bad, you knock on wood.
Right. Yeah. So, and actually, I discovered, so knock on wood, a lot of people say, well, knock on wood is about the sign of knocking on the cross. Some of us grew up saying, like, Jews don't do that, but we do, because it's such a generic thing. But actually, like most things in all of our religions, it's not, its origins is not the cross, its origins is pagan, it's pre that. It's actually, we have in the Bible, the posts and the trees that are worshipped by the Canaanites, the Asherot, the Asherah, which is a feminine goddess symbol, some kind of totem pole or tree-like place of worship. That's probably some of the earliest layers in which spirits, good and bad, were lived in the trees. And so, a piece of wood, that's where it comes from. That's actually probably where it comes from. But it's made its way into the world. Yes. Did I see a hand? Somebody wanted to add something or question?
I was just going to say, I can't hear everyone out there.
Oh, okay.
And you've got a microphone. So
yes. I'll make sure I'll repeat things if we do more interaction going forward. The microphone, you could probably hear me without most weeks, but I'm getting over, I've got some congestion, so this will help me speak more gently and also make sure that things get picked up at the video.
I can add something. I don't know if it's more from my mom's side, it's Sephardic side.
Yes.
So if you go to Shiva, I can go 1 time, 3 times, 4, but never 2.
Yes, so thank you. We will, so I'll just repeat. If you're visiting a Shiva, you can go one time, 3 or 4, but never 2. I'm not going to give an explanation for that now, but when we do our text study, we're going to come towards the, I'll make sure we have time for it, when we get towards the end of today's text study, we will find a text about a different topic, but exactly the same thing. And we'll see, again, fascinating. I cannot necessarily tell you the origins of all these things, but what we're going to look at today are texts 100% from the Talmud. So the Talmud is the compendium of rabbinic writings that take us from approximately just before 0, so maybe 50, 100 BCE, through to about 550 CE. That's its totality in terms of the different generations of rabbis, conversations they had. So the Mishnah and the Gemara. Mishnah was the first 200 years worth of that tradition, and then the Gemara was additional commentary and conversation that spun off of the first 200 years. But these are different generations of rabbis. So about 500 or so conversation. And they're organized into tractates, but the tractates have titles and labels that might think that's the topic. So, for example, we're going to look at some sections tonight of Pesachim, which you would think, oh, that's just laws to do with Pesach. But actually, as you'll see, it goes all over the place. It's really, it's not until many centuries later that rabbis attempted to extract from the Talmud all of the legal information and codify it in a way where you could actually look up topics in some kind of logical order. That's the codes that comes later. So this is really a smorgasbord. And I found most of this by following the footnotes from several articles, scholarly articles about Jewish superstitions. And that led me to some of the citations. And then I looked at other material that was close to those original citations and just found this incredible collection. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hand out, what I've done is I intentionally, there's quite a few pages. I didn't want to kill too many trees. There should be enough for 1 between 2. All of this is on a Google Doc. So if anybody, you're welcome to take the hard copies with you, but if somebody would like the resource to look at some point in the future, but knows that they're just going to lose the paper, it's going to get lost in the pile somewhere and eventually thrown out and recycle. I'm happy to send an email out to everyone who's in the group after the fact and send you the texts so you can have them. So, I think counted right 1 between 2. Okay, now while you're doing that, I'm going to do one other thing over here at the computer because Annie doesn't have the text, but I can give her the text. So, give me a moment, Eileen, and I will share with you. To take that down for a moment so that I can go to here and I want to listen to that. And over here, I want to share. Okay. What's going on here? Oh. Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm not sure why I ended up all the way up there. Oh. Is that it? Nope. Okay. Should be able to scroll forward. Yeah, I can see. Okay, here we go. So, everybody have something they can see? Good. So let's jump in. First of all, actually, a wonderful quote, just that I think sort of is a good overview of everything that we're going to be looking at in these two sessions that isn't in your text. It's from Sefer Hasidim, which is a German text, 13th century, of really strange material. It's the Book of the Pious. It was really a kind of a cult or a subgroup within the Jewish community that was sort of extra strict in trying to practice everything in a very, very precise way. And there were all kinds of don't do this and do that. And I've studied pieces of this text before. It's quite fascinating. But here's a quote from that book. One should not believe in superstitions, but still it is best to be heedful of them. Wonderful fun. Okay, so this first text we're going to look at, the Tractate Sanhedrin, it's the second text that actually will get to the point of sort of why I selected it, but I wanted you to see the intro because it's actually a very famous little piece of Talmud. This is the opening, so Mishnah, the original text. It starts off, all of the Jewish people, even sinners and those who are liable to be executed with a court-imposed death penalty. So they committed a crime for which death was the penalty. Have a share in the world to come. As it is stated, and your people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. Their branch of my planting, the work of my hands, for my name to be glorified. So this is the opening text. And when people say, what do Jews believe about what happens after you die? This is the classic text, right? The idea that there is a world to come, and we all go to it, right? You don't have to believe in something in particular. We say, some religions you have to believe in a certain way or do a certain thing, but Judaism, that's the sort of classic answer. We all have a place in the world to come. And this is how this text starts. But then it continues. And these are the exceptions. The people who have no share in the world to come. Even when they fulfilled many mitzvot, one who says there is no resurrection of the dead derived from the Torah, and one who says the Torah did not originate from heaven, and an Epicurus treats Torah scholars and the Torah that they teach with contempt. Now this is fascinating because this is written in a period in which there are other groups within the Jewish community who still existed, and there was a certain degree of vying for, post the destruction of the temple, what is Judaism going to look like? And who will lead the way? Now we know, from the benefit of historic time, the rabbis won. These specific things that they are citing right here, this is part of their ideology, and not all of it was shared by some of these other sects. So this is actually, they're making this up as they go along. This is rabbinic propaganda for, if you want to be a real Jew, we're going to tell you what the rules are from now on, and this is them. Okay? So there is nothing about the resurrection of the dead in the Bible. When you die in the Bible, you go down to Sheol. We don't know what that is or where that is. Early texts that discuss it just say it's like the dark nothingness where we all end up. Like there is no soul, there's no life, there's dead is dead. That's pretty much the rabbinic, the biblical version, as much as we have it. Sheol, there might have been other stories around it. We do get from other cultures, not from our own Jewish texts, that Sheol might have been a place where, kind of like a Hades, if you think about some of the other ancient cultures where there was like an underworld where you travel to. So there may have been some aspects of that crept in, but Sheol was basically, you go down and that's where you stay. This idea of the resurrection of the dead is very much a rabbinic idea, They try to hook it onto an interpretation of Torah. There's nothing in the Torah that literally says it, but they say not only do you have to believe it, but you have to believe it comes from the Torah itself. And this became sort of a fundamental piece of that early rabbinic thought. And certainly today, if you ask, any sort of traditional rabbi, they would give you this line that Jews believe in end of days, resurrection. We all will get resurrected. And we have burial rules and traditions that are based on that set of assumptions.
Where is Sheol mentioned?
I'm not sure if this is the first time, but one of the earliest times I know is that when Joseph's brothers come and tell their father Jacob that Joseph must have been killed by a wild animal. He's like, I'm going to go down to Sheol. Right? Yeah, I think that's one of the earliest sources. But there's a few other places as well. So this is nothing to do with superstitions. This is just, by the side, this is a really interesting text. So then we go a little bit further, and let me just scroll down. Let's see if we do this. Yep, hey, there we go. Okay. So Rabbi Akiva says, also included in the exceptions, he wanted to add to this list, one who reads external literature. Okay, so that's the text. So we've established the canon, but there are these other books, and some of those other books are books that are heavily influential in the development of early Christianity. And there's also Greek philosophy, and the Greek philosophers posit a different set of beliefs about the soul and the body and all of that. So he's saying, don't touch that stuff. And this is why I put this text in the first place. And one who whispers implications over a wound and says as an invocation for healing, every illness that I placed upon Egypt, I will not place upon you, for I am the Lord your healer. By doing so, he shows contempt for the sanctity of the name of God, and therefore has no share in the world to come. Abba Shaul says, also included in the exceptions is one who pronounces the ineffable name of God as it is written, with its letters.
That's where that came from?
Forbidden to say the name of God out loud. This is all setting down these. So I cannot explain all of these to you in terms of like what was going on in their minds and why these things were so important. I can't give you. First of all, we'll never go through the text and try to get into depth with all of these. But this is going to be important. The difference between I should say that this is obviously a translation, and the words that are in bold match with actual words in the Hebrew Aramaic, in the text itself. The words that are not in bold are words that are added so that we have something that flows in plain meaning. But I'd say that because the text here talks about whispering something and saying, but it doesn't use the word invocation. Not in the actual text. It's a much tighter, shorter text in the original. As you can see by all of the words that are that are not in bold, you can see there's a lot of explanation added to our English text here. So what do you make of this? What would be so wrong about uttering these words over a wound? Why would that be something that would be, even if you lived a virtuous life and did all of these other mitzvot, you would have no place in the world to come? Why is this you've gone a step too far? Yes.
Well, it says before that you can't believe in other religious systems. You mentioned like the Greek systems. This might be another way they're saying you're practicing something outside of their definition of pure Judaism.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. So it could be something that this is something that others do, and therefore we can't do that. And certainly there were many ancient modes of practice that had systems like this.
Does it have anything to do with forgiveness and not forgetting what happened in Egypt, but let's move forward?
I don't think it's the specific words itself.
Oh.
I think it's the fact that it was an invocation in God's name that was specifically uttered over the wound.
Is it almost a form of hubris that I as a human can take on God's power?
Right. It's like, we're using words, almost as like magic, right, in order to do this. It's interesting that, we have to think about we have a healing prayer, right? Moses calls out to God, for his sister, El Nara Fadala, please God, please heal her, right? There's a prayer. We offer a prayer for healing. But this is a little different, right? This is like, I'm going to say words over this wound, and I'm going to call upon God, right, in this, right, almost in a magician-like way. A magician, magic and sorcery is forbidden. And so there is something to that of it. But we're going to come back to this in later texts, because we'll see that there are things that you cannot say if it appears to be invocation-like, as though you're trying to say a magic spell. But there are other things that you can say if what you're doing is simply uttering words to call upon protection from something that might be out there. So what's the difference? Clearly there's a difference, Phil.
So is this saying that you couldn't even say, please God, heal this person?
No, you can say that. You can, but I think that's different to using words in an incantation-like way to say, heal this specific thing right here.
Could it be that you don't want regular people to do anything mystical that might be godlike?
Right, I think so. But that's a piece of it.
It's sort of an arrogance to think that you can pronounce something and heal somebody when really it's God that does.
Right.
That could be.
Right, and very much, I think they did understand healing came from God, but that, and physicians and people with medical expertise, that God had given human beings the skills and the knowledge to bring about healing. But that was different than uttering these words. Yes?
Is the tradition or whatever of not writing God for people with G's, dash,
Yep.
On the idea of this?
Well, it's certainly the last piece about not saying God's name, right? So that over time there have been what we call putting, that people talk about putting a fence around the Torah. So there's a rule, and then they expand and expand and expand, so you don't accidentally break the rule. What we're not allowed to do is say the original name of God. That was only said by the high priest in the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur. It's the only time it could be uttered. And when he said it, he had a string around his waist, and the string was being held by someone outside of the Holy of Holies, so in case something happened and he got struck down, they could yank him out without having to go in to get him. That was the ritual of the Yom Kippur of the Holy of Holies, when the high priest said God's name. So, right, over time, so people write G-D, well, of course, G-D is not, G-O-D is not the name of God. That's not what we're talking about. But yet, people have gotten into a habit. And some people won't write that at all, just write Hashem, the name. So, those are not exactly superstitions, but they are sort of practices of sort of showing extra caution about not coming close to the forbidden utterance of God's name.
One of the 10 Commandments is not to invoke the divine name in vain. On the other hand, we know that the ancestor, Abraham, when he did something fabulous, like planting a tree in Beersheba, he called the divine name on it, and that tree lives up until today. But when they do something really special, they say, I did it with the direct help of God. Noah built an ark with the direct instructions.
Yes.
So there was a time when working with the divine was accepted. However, in this Sanhedrin period, when the temple is destroyed, they need to have some sort of creating a community. Not everybody in its own synagogue, and then you don't have a community. So I think reading this text is doing a healing practice that is acceptable for the time. If there is a wound and you want it to go away, the healer would say, just as the Lord healed every single one of us or protected us, I would like help here, and then saying God's name in that instance is part of the process. And the other, so Abba Shaul said, you cannot say that, and you cannot even replace the Lord's name with the letters of the Lord's name. This is when they put the extra fence around uttering the Lord's name, whether you did a fine job or not.
Yeah, but I do think what you said before about the reference to the Ten Commandments is not to take God's name in vain. So, right, if you do an invocation, which is calling upon God's divine power to intercede here and heal this wound, and the wound doesn't heal, right? That doesn't make God look too good. So, I think that that's a problem. That's a problem. So I think that's an important piece that actually you sort of have to highlight there. Okay, so let's move on. There's more we could say about this, and I say some of this we're going to come back to in other themes. Okay, so the next text that I chose, this is really just a few examples of superstitious practices that were clearly pervasive at this period in our history. And I am not aware of any of them having been things that we have been consciously aware of, even when we talked about things that our parents or grandparents used to do. These seem like practices that whatever the significance of them were, we've lost long before. I culled just a few examples. I got caught up in reading like 6 pages of Talmud in translation. I can't read 6 pages of Talmud in the original at the time that I had, but 6 pages where it was just example, and not just the examples of these things you mustn't do, but as we get into it, I pulled out just a couple to give you an example of the kind of conversation they're having, about the level of detail they get into, about how not to accidentally get caught up in some of these practices. So, Pesachim 111a. Let me just scroll down over here. Keep doing this. Okay, here we go. The Gemara cites more statements concerning superstitions and witchcraft. That, by the way, is not in the text. That's just an intro to what we're about to read. Reish Lakish said there are 4 matters. The one who performs them, his blood is upon his own head, and he is held liable for his own life due to the evil spirits that rest upon him. So anyone who does this, you brought this upon yourself, is what it's saying.
But this is not the afterlife. This is
no, this is
severe risk.
Yes, yeah. We've moved to a new topic. This is just a few more generic superstitions that clearly were prevalent at that time. One who relieves himself in a spot between a palm tree and a wall. One who passes between 2 palm trees. One who drinks borrowed water. And one who passes over spilled water, even if his wife poured it out in front of him. Fascinating. I mean, just as any.
I think that's fabulous. That if there is some argument in the house and the man is striding towards his wife, oops, spilled water. Stay there. Don't go.
Exactly.
Very useful.
Very useful. Right. Okay. So. Nobody's ever heard of these, right? I've never heard of any of these. We don't live in the right place for palm trees. Maybe the Florida Jews have. Okay. The Gemara further states these 2 women who are sitting at a crossroads, one on this side of the road and one on the other side, and they are facing each other. They are certainly engaging in witchcraft. What is the remedy for one who walks by? If there is another route, he should go by it. And if there is no other route, if there is another person with him, they should hold hands and switch places. And if there is no other person with him, he should say as follows: Igeret, Azlat, Azia, Velusia are killed by arrows. These are names of demons invoked by witches. So that is, so remember I said before that, say in God's name, an invocation that was like in God's name over a wound to create healing, absolutely a no-no. But this is now, we're going to see a number of examples of things that, utterances, words that can be said, and the power of the words themselves can be like kind of create a protective force around you from the demons that might otherwise be coming your way, which is fascinating. Now, some of you may have heard this before, and I've said it in other classes before, but when we talk about magic and incantations and the power of words, the classic example that has now made its way into the universe, and everyone knows, when the magician shows up and does a trick and covers something over and has his little wand and is going to tap on the thing and make the thing disappear, and he says, "You say the magic words." What are the words? Abracadabra, right? Abracadabra. Bara, this is Aramaic. Bara is the word to create. I will create. Kadabra, from the word dibur in Hebrew, to speak, as I speak. I will create as I speak. Through the words I am saying, I'm going to manifest reality. That's Aramaic, and we actually have stories. I didn't bring them in this collection of texts. We have stories in the Talmud of rabbis who actually did manifest reality with words. There are stories of using words to create life out of nothing. Rabbis who had mystic abilities, that they were able through their recitation of incantations of words to manifest a calf, which they then slaughtered in a kosher way and had as their Shabbat dinner. There are other stories that lead on from that and in other places. This, by the way, leads up to famous myth of the medieval period of the Golem of Prague. The idea that it would be possible that a rabbi who had mystical knowledge to take clay and shape it into a being and recite in words and then place a particular word in either in the mouth or the forehead of this clay being and bring it to life. That has its origins in some of these really, really early texts. So we do have that, it's in the same books that have all of the other laws that tell us how to light candles on Shabbat, how to keep Passover, and all of these other things that are sort of part and parcel of living life as a Jew, much of which we still do. The same texts have all of this other material, much of which has been lost in time. But we don't need to go into depth in these texts. I just really brought some of these examples for you to see that they're there and what they say about them. So the one after, again, just, as I said, I was so fascinated, but I didn't want to give you 6 pages of this. But this is just an example of the level of depth they get into when they're talking about these particular superstitious practices. The Gemara continues to discuss harmful spirits. One who relieves himself on the stump of a palm tree will be seized by a spirit of a pain of half his head, it might call a migraine. And one who places his head on the stump of a palm tree will be seized by a spirit of sickness. One who walks over a palm tree, if the tree is cut down, he too will be killed. If that tree is uprooted, he will also be uprooted and will die. Mara comments. This statement applies only if he does not place his legs upon it. However, if he places his legs upon it, we have no problem with it. So, a tree. Now, I'm positing, as I said, I have not, maybe there's somebody with a PhD who's researched this, and if I had the time to research like a huge amount of scholarly material, I might find some more of the origins of some of this. In a 2-part sort of just giving you a taste series, I didn't go into that kind of depth in my own research. But I do know that, as I said, we talked about the pagan origins of touch wood. Right? The trees in ancient pagan civilizations were invested with spirits, fertility gods, spirits that you worshipped, that you prayed to, and later on also, negative evil spirits. And so I think this is a pickup from that there is, It is the ancient version of don't step under the ladder. I think is what this is. Right? You know, you're going to walk around, you don't step over the stumps, the things that are broken down, because this is where evil spirits live. There were spirits that were in that tree. The tree is now cut, broken in some way, which has enabled whatever spirits were occupying that tree to now be free. And they might still be hanging around where they used to live. So don't get too close. And, you know, for guys walking around, why would they potentially get close to a tree? They might need to take a peek, right? So it's very practical. Like, why is that an example? It's an example because, you know, they didn't have public bathrooms all over the place. So it's actually something they might have had to deal with. And so be mindful of where you are. Thoughts or fears? Huh?
I'm not going to pee in the foot anymore.
Right. Okay. So now we come to this again, just examples for us to get a sense of what exists, what's going on. Yeah. Two texts from, and this is an example again. Why is this in Tractate Pesachim? It's got nothing to do with Pesach. I would have to look at what was going on in the pages before to see how, for those who come to our Torah study group on a Saturday morning, you know how we like read a line or two of text, and somebody who walked into the room 10 minutes later would wonder, what the heck are you talking about? What on earth does it have to do with the text? That's the Talmud. For those who want to actually see this process in action, join us every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. This is what we do with text all the time. But here it got written down. The Gemara comments, the demons near the cave bush are called Ruchay. A demon found near the sword trees is called Shida. The demons found on the roofs are called Rishveh. The Gemara asks, what's the practical difference of these definitions? Like, why does it matter that the demons at this place are called this and they're called that? They're demons. You want to stay away from the demons. It makes a difference for writing an amulet on behalf of one who has been harmed. It's necessary to know the name of the demon who caused the damage. How can you write an amulet that will, you know, take away the harm or, you know, get that demon out of your house unless you know? Unless you know what demon it was. So you have to know where the harm took place. It's on that side. Yeah, coming from behind those ones. So you have to know where the harm took place. So amulets were written. Rabbis, you know, people who were skilled in this kind of knowledge would write amulets, you know, on clay, amulets that you might on your neck, in your pocket, bowls, incantation bowls. Next time I will show you pictures. We found them, you know, clay bowls that had incantations written around the insides, and these bowls would be placed under your bed, you know, in the home, in places, as a way of keeping these demon spirits away. And a little piece of trivia here. Some of you may have heard of the founding, he's often, may not have been absolutely, but he's seen as the founder of Hasidism, the Baal Shem Tov. Right? The Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov, that name that he was given means the master of the good name. What he was actually known for prior to sort of becoming the sort of founding figure of Jewish mysticism in the broader sense was that he was a master of writing these protective amulets. That you went to him and he knew what the names were. He knew how to write these incantations that would help protect you from something that might have happened to you and to keep the spirits at bay. So right there, I mean, that's, you know, we're talking the 1600s, 16th century. Yeah.
I just want to bring up, women also made amulets.
Yes.
We read a book several years ago about that called Enchantress.
Right.
In our book group.
Right, so the author, Maggie Anton, did an awful lot of research into some of these sources.
Right, and women were very powerful for their, not only making amulets, but for their medical knowledge. They were psychologists, they were the doctors, they helped people with having babies, all kinds of things they did. So women were very much into it, not just.
Right, and when men were not comfortable with the power that women had, with some of the things, particularly the homemade things that they had that helped with healing, they got called witches. Right? I mean, that was
Some of them did. Some of them though were revered.
Right.
Their knowledge. It just depends what society you were in, who was
what family you
for
were
it,
in.
who was proactive, who was for it, who was against it. But women certainly were very much involved in it. It was around maybe 200, 300, and 80. I think that was the time frame.
Mm. Oh yeah, did I print the same thing twice?
Yes.
Yes, sorry about that.
Well, you're going down a rabbit hole, just to
Yes.
figure out all this.
Okay, so let's get to the next one. How are we doing? Good. So, this next one, it's only, we're not going to get into the full depths of what it's talking about, except for the final phrase. The final phrase is going to now lead into a completely different source from the Talmud. That is the first time this evening that we're going to come across something that we still do and we still say. And it's fascinating to look at the original source. And I actually think when Maggie Anton came and spoke here, she mentioned this. So again, we're still in Pesachim. The Gemara comments, from the 1st of Tammuz to the 16th of that month, these demons are certainly found. From here onwards, it's uncertain whether they are found or whether they are not found. They can be found in the shadow of a sea swell that has not grown a cubit, and in the shadow of objects in the morning and evening, when their length is less than a cubit. None of this is relevant, the last sentence. And they are mostly found in the shadow of a privy. Demons are mostly found in the shadow of a privy, the outhouse. Now this is important because we now jump to a totally different part of the Talmud, Brachot 60b. One who enters a bathroom says to the angels who accompany him at all times, "Be honored, honorable holy ones, servants of the one on high. Give honor to the God of Israel. Leave me until I enter and do my will and come back to you." Abai said, a person should not say this, lest they abandon him and go. Rather, he should say, guard me, help me, help me, support me, support me. Before I continue, I want to just scroll down. Wait for me, until I enter and come out, as this is the way of man.
How come?
Oops. I didn't come through very well, but I think you're asking me to scroll down for you.
That was just a mistake. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Very echoey over there. Okay, so upon exiting, when you have finished your business, one says, "Blessed who formed man in wisdom and created in him many orifices and cavities. It is revealed and known before the throne of your glory that were one of them to be ruptured or blocked, it would be impossible to survive and stand before you." In our prayer book, morning blessings.
I know.
Right, again, prizes for those who come to Torah study regularly, because we do the morning blessings. And we actually usually read an alternative version. But page 76 of our prayer book. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them had wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. This text is the origin of this prayer. This is one of the first prayers one is meant to say. When these morning prayers can be recited in the synagogue as part of the Birkat HaShachar, part of blessings of the morning. But traditionally, they would be said in the home. So when you first wake up, you're meant to say Modani Lafanecha. And then pretty much the very next blessing you would say is this blessing, which is often known by its opening phrase after the first few words, Asher Yatzah. Because one of the first things that you do when you get up in the morning is you go to the bathroom. So it's the bathroom prayer. That is actually what it is. When I'm teaching kids about prayers, they love the idea that there's a bathroom prayer. And in fact, I love in our Toch, High Holy Days, when I do the Toch services, there's a version that a guy called Andy Curry wrote many years ago that uses the words in Hebrew for the openings and closings of the passages, the Nakavim and the Chalulim. And so his chorus goes like this. Nakavim, Nakavim, Chalulim, Chalulim. Thanks God, I seem to be working fine. And then he goes on to talk about other body parts, but it's very cute. It's very cute. So here we have. So we started with, these things that what are you going to say to make sure that the angels are surrounding you to protect you from the demons who hang around outside the privy? And out of this comes a blessing, a gratitude that you say when you make it back out, and all is okay. And, we've lost the first part. And I did check that first part is not in any traditional prayer book. It's gone. But that last part is in every prayer book. Every prayer book. So that's one of those sort of moments. So this idea of demons, the whole idea that demons exist and are found in all of these different places. Where does this come from? Because it's not in the Torah. We don't talk about demons in the Torah. We do find it in very, very early texts of mystical writings. And the Zohar is full of it. The Zohar is full of demons and evil spirits. And the king of all the demons, Asmodeus. There's a whole pantheon of demons. A lot of this comes out of Babylonia. And that was the world that these rabbis lived in. So it's part of the ancient culture of not what was inherently part of Jewish writings and teachings, as we see evolving in our own tradition, but what we absorbed from the habits and the cultures where we ended up, and particularly during these centuries when the whole rabbinic world was, these scholars were creating all these texts. Where were they? They were in Babylonia. So this is very much where it was coming from. But we see it developed, and because it's developed in the Zohar, one of the places that you see it most prevalent and present in some of the language and liturgy today within the Jewish world is in the Hasidic world. I'll keep an eye on the time. If we have time, I have a copy of this, the Art Scroll Siddur. There are different versions of it. Art Scroll is one of the classic Orthodox Siddurim, and the version that I have here is the Sephardic version. That doesn't mean Sephardi. This is the version of the Siddur that the Hasidic communities use. And so there's things in here that you will not find anywhere else. And there's a version of the bedtime Shema, which actually you do find in the Ashkenaz version, but we'll look at it in here if we can. If not today, then definitely next time. And there's also in here what you need to recite with a friend for the amelioration of a bad dream. Prayers to be said to ameliorate the potential bad spirits and the evil that might come from sort of the vibes of a bad dream. This is a contemporary siddur. It's still in here. So there are places where some of these concepts, if not explicitly talked about, are implicitly embedded in the rituals and the practices of communities today. Not ones that most of us hang out in, or perhaps are intimately familiar with, but very much still present. And as we'll see, there's plenty that is part of what we still do today. Asher Yatzah is just one example where we still have these texts. So let's go a little further down here. I'll pause. Any questions or comments? I know I'm throwing a lot of material at you tonight.
No, it's probably good. Well, and some things come and some not.
make it into our liturgies?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question because,
Isn't everything superstition?
you know, so I was asked this question just the other night. I was talking to a friend about this class that I was preparing for, and they said, well, what's the difference between a superstition and, you know, believing in God? Right? What qualitatively is the difference? And it is fascinating, you know, that which we deem to be faith, and that, you know, lifts us up and which gives us sort of something to sort of hold on to, that sort of helps make meaning from our life, right? And what is the difference between that and some of these superstitions? I think it's interesting. You kind of know the difference when you see it, but I don't know. Does somebody want to offer a good definition there? Because I got a little stumped actually about how to succinctly offer a definition of a superstition such that it would be differentiated from some things that we call faith or ritual. Right?
No, if you don't know that it's faith or ritual, nobody attaches God to it. You know, you're just looking at a traditional household. I assume everything's superstition. Yeah, really. You know, if you look at some of the things like Shabbat, things that people do, what the heck? You know, who did that?
Right.
My personal experience, having grown up in Israel, reading the original text of the books of Moses, and being an engineer and believing that a few principles can guide you through most issues. If I can trace a habit or a thing to things that are essential for my Judaism, like Tikkun Olam covers tzedakah and covers righteousness and covers truth and truthfulness and all that, that is for me part of being Jewish and part of my religiousness as well as tradition. I know that my dad would have done the same thing, and probably if he didn't do the same as his dad, he would have gotten a spanking. This is tradition. Things that are like, oh no, I forgot to say this thing before going to the bathroom, that cannot really be traced to the books of Moses as I know them.
Right.
So this for me will be a defining, a telling between the two.
Right. And I don't disagree. I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it and making a differentiation. Although there are some things which are very precious to us, like coming together for Passover Seder. That's entirely a construction of the rabbinic era.
Excuse me, Vehigat Mincha is right there in the book. You need to bring your child and your child.
You need to tell, right? You need to tell it.
So
right.
Vehigat Mincha is.
That's true. Okay, there's a
No, I would love to have this discussion as an engineer.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Right. But yeah, the actual ritual itself, Passover Seder, was a rabbinic invention that was based on a Greek ritual. I love it that some of the things that we have that are most dear to us, their origins are far from, you know, from other sources. Hanukkah is my favorite example. Just about every single ritual and song that we have and food for Hanukkah came from some other culture, which is very ironic when it's a festival about fighting back against the assimilating forces of the Syrian Greek culture. But we have to laugh at ourselves. That's why Jews are such good comedians. Okay, I'm gonna just book time for a couple more, and I think we're getting close to the end of the handout, so I didn't do bad. Let me see if I want to jump over. I might want to jump over a couple here. The next text were actually these were just really just there for kind of, you might find it interesting to know that there were these superstitions that were to do with food practices. That having a dirty house, having crumbs in the house, having food hanging out in the house causes poverty. And if these crumbs are spread throughout the house on Shabbat nights, Friday nights, or Tuesday nights when demons are present, harmful spirits rest on them. And then it goes on to an administering angel appointed over the food. There's the angel of clean and the angel of dirty. And this I found fascinating because some of you might be familiar with a potem about when we sing Shalom Aleichem. when we welcome the ministering angels into our home on Friday night. Right? That is a table hymn that we sometimes sing as part of our Friday night service. We welcome the ministering angels. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. They're the angels on high. So the folk story is that if there were two angels, the good angel and the bad angel, and if you've cleaned the house and everything is ready for Shabbat, you know, the good angel is very happy and says, may it be this way every week, and the bad angel has to say, Amen. But if the house is around shackles and nothing is cooked or put away, right, then the bad angel gets to go, ha, maybe like this every Shabbat, and the good angel has to go, Amen. I don't know the origins of that folk tale, but I think maybe I saw some notes. People have heard it. It's an old story, and it's attached to Shalom Aleichem. And here we have in the Talmud these descriptions of angels, different types of angels, over like the clean and the dirty, and the crumbs, and and the demons that come if you leave the crumbs on the carpet. This is the origins of things that, and now we have a song, right? We sing a song, and there's a cute story we can tell our kids. But these are the origins. So I think what happens is over the centuries, some of the specifics, if you told them, I can't really explain the evolving of culture definitively. We know over time our scientific knowledge has grown. Things that used to be described as, the devil, the demons, evil spirits have done this, right? Has caused harm in this way. We now have medical explanations for it. And we forget how recent some of that is. You only need to go back 60, 70 years, and there were still places, certainly in Eastern Europe, where a child who had epilepsy, if you had epileptic fits, that was demon possession. They would take you, they might take you to a religious person for an exorcism, right? That wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's horrific to us. So how do we go from a time where there are people and places where that is believed and practiced to a time where we go, that's ridiculous, we could never do that, right? Science, knowledge, it evolves. And so, what we're looking at here is 2,000 years old. So clearly, there's a lot of this that over time, it just drops away because we're living in a society that understands the world around it so differently. And yet there are these words and songs and stories that were built upon some of these ideas. And so we carry these little fragments, with us.
Even now today, in Africa, with Ebola, they're having trouble inoculating all these. The villagers think it's evil and wrong.
Right.
So it's just not even 60 years ago.
Right. It depends on the culture you're talking about, where you are. Exactly. Okay. About 20 minutes. What I want to do is, let's go to Shavuot 15b. Jump a little bit. Okay. No, it's just that's attractive. Right, exactly. So we're going to do two texts that are side by side. The first text just quotes Psalms. Now I know I'm jumping in a little bit. The context are words that are said as words of protection. And they recited the psalm from the verse. We get a quote from Psalm 91. He that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Until they complete the verse. Because you, O Lord, are my refuge, you've made the Most High your habitation. Okay, so we've got two citations from Psalm 91. And then we have a recitation from Psalm 3. Psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son. Lord, how many are my enemies? Until they reach the verse, salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be upon your people. Selah. Then the text after that, it is related that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi would recite these verses to protect him from evil spirits during the night and fall asleep while saying them. The Gemara asks, how could he do that? But doesn't Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi himself say one is prohibited from healing himself with words of Torah? Takes us back to the conversation with one of the first texts in this packet. The Gemara answers, to protect oneself is different. He recited these verses only to protect himself from evil spirits, not to heal himself. So, this is where I want to now come to the bedtime Shema. Now, some of you may be familiar with the tradition that one is meant to recite the Shema, when one lies down, when one rises up. And so, when one goes to sleep at night, one of the last things you're meant to say is the Shema. And when you wake up, one of the first things you're meant to say is the Shema. And so people who have that practice often just say the Shema. But if you open up a traditional prayer book, you'll find that unfortunately it's not a little 20-second ritual. It's like 15 minutes worth of pages and pages of stuff. The bedtime Shema is a whole service, a ritual in and of itself. And there are different versions of it. So if you go to any Reform prayer book that has a Reform prayer book that's meant for the home, you won't find this in our Shabbat prayer book at all because this isn't designed for the home. But we do have like books that are home use. They have just designed something very simple with the Shema at its core, and it doesn't have most of this material. But this material is fascinating. So and I didn't photocopy this for you, but I just want to give you the essence of it. So the opening of the Shema, the first things that it says leading up to kind of almost legalistic sounding the very first thing one says is a bidui. So High Holy Days we say a bidui, a confession. Actually, there's an opportunity to say a bidui every night. The idea being that you basically let it go. Somebody did something to you, whether it was on purpose, and God forbid you don't wake up the following morning. You don't want them to have on them that they committed some kind of sin against you. So you forgive, you let it go. And if you've done something to somebody else, you kind of say, if I did it on purpose, I hope I can be forgiven. I hope that I don't have unfinished business left here. And it's a very interesting and psychologically a wonderful way to go to sleep. Because I don't know about you, but I know for me, if I've had a bad conversation with someone during the day, I'm likely to do the opposite. I'm going to play it over and over and over again in my head. This is like, let it go. This is the Hasidic version of the Siddur. So I just feel you might find this interesting. I'll just give you an opening phrase. Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who angered or antagonized me, or who sinned against me, whether against my body, my property, my honor, or anything else of mine, whether he did it accidentally, willfully, carelessly, or purposely, whether through speech, deed, thought, or notion. So it sounds kind of legalistic. It's like covering all the clauses, right? This is a good one, though. Whether in this transmigration or another transmigration. Because in Hasidic thinking, they believe that there is a belief in the reincarnation of souls. And so, whether in this life or another life, at this point, I would normally break into an Indigo Girls song. Galileo reference. I forgive every Jew. And no one will be punished because of me. And then it goes on. So that's an opening. Then there's a sort of, kind of a version of a kind of a Hashkivenu, like prayer. Then the Shema. After the Shema, we have some additional paragraphs. And after that, Psalm 3. Remember our text. Psalm 3, verse 2 to 9 is in this ritual. Then we actually have Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu prayer, which is one of our evening prayers that we recite in every evening service. That's saying, let me lay down to sleep at night, O God, and raise me erect to life and peace, to life restored. So basically, let me go to sleep in peace, and please, may I wake up tomorrow morning. It's the essence of that. And protect me while I'm sleeping. And then after that, we have references to angels. We have references to Satan, the adversarial angel. This is now where we're getting to liturgy that has its source in what this rabbi was doing, calling upon protection when he goes to sleep at night, from anything evil, from any bad spirits, any bad dreams. Hashem said to the Satan, and Satan in Judaism is an angel. It is an adversarial angel, one who comes to challenge and threaten. Hashem shall denounce you, O Satan, and Hashem, who selects Jerusalem, shall denounce you again. This is indeed a firebrand rescued from flames. So these are just quotes and statements being put out to say, God is going to protect me and keep you at bay. Stay away from me. And then, when we have done that, we have the priestly blessing. These are all words of protections. We have, and these are things you recite 3 times each. And the last of them is one that I love to sing. I've used this many times as a prayer when I'm visiting people in a pastoral context. It is the angel's blessing. You call upon an angel to be on your right, on your left, before you and behind you, and the presence of the Shekhinah above your head. Shekhinah is one of the names of God, the divine presence above you. And so as you go to sleep at night, this is all part of this ritual. It's here in this prayer book. You are literally asking for these protective angels to kind of, stand guard so that you can go to sleep in peace. Now again, in ancient times, we get this. We get that darkness was dangerous, right? It got dark, and there was no electric lights. Darkness was when robbers might attack, people died of all kinds of things. There was a much higher rate of mortality. We didn't have the same kind of life expectancy, and so it's not surprising that we might find this kind of language. What is incredible is that it's still here, and that's partly the culture of a traditional kind of orthodoxy that once it's in the prayer book, they're not going to take it out. Whereas in the Reform movement, we took all references to angels out of the Reform liturgy in the 20th century. Actually, at the end of the 19th century, but certainly the 20th century. There were many other references to angels, some of which we have subsequently put back in, but we changed the language. We took them out because late 19th century and early 20th century Reform Judaism was the Judaism of rational thought. And we wanted nothing to do with it. There was this old European shtetl world of superstitions, and we wanted nothing to do with it. And so the leading thinkers of the Reform movement, any trace of that kind of thinking, they took it out. So very little of it still exists in our prayer book, but we can still find it. So let me sing you the Angel's Blessing. There are a couple of, Debbie Friedman wrote a beautiful setting actually of the Angel's Blessing, but it really works best in 2-part harmony because it was like 2 parts that went together. So the one that I often use is a melody that was written by Shlomo Carlebach. B'Shem Hashem Elohei Yisrael Mimini Michael U'Mishloi Gabriel U'Milfanai Uriel U'Me'achorai Raphael Ve'al Roshi Shechinatel. In the name, the God of Israel. On my right is Michael, on my left is Gabriel. In front of me is Uriel, and behind me Raphael. And above my head, the divine presence does dwell. Pretty, huh? Michael, Gabriel, these are 2 sort of archangels. Uriel, from the Hebrew, to light. So it's to light my way. It's like it's in front of me. It's like my flashlight, lighting my way. Raphael, from the Hebrew word refuah, healing, watching my back. Got my back covered there. That's Raphael, the angel of healing. So it's even the names of the angels themselves and their placement is kind of relative and relevant to what we're looking at here. So, and then the final words of this ritual, so we're like, how many, 6 pages later, I said this is the bedtime Shema, just before you go to bed, a few things to say, is Adon Olam. And because the closing line of Adon Olam is V'yado ki ruchi, in your hand, God, I entrust my spirit when I go to sleep and when I awaken. With my spirit shall my body remain. God is with me, I shall not fear. That's the closing line of Adon Olam. And that was the idea, was that our spirits are in God's hand when we sleep. And that's why when we wake up in the morning, the opening words are Moda Nilavaneh, grateful, thankful am I before you. And the sentence continues, you restored my soul to me in faithfulness. How great is your trust in me, that you gave me my soul back so that I could live another day and do something useful with this day. It's actually kind of beautiful, but it's embedded with all of these beliefs and ideas about, what happens in the night, and the fact that we need these forces protecting us from the evil spirits. Okay, from the sublime to the ridiculous. And I said we get to your thing about how often you visit a Shiva house. Okay, final text. Here we go. Now this is actually relevant to the tractate in which it's in. Pesachim 1:10a. Rav Papa said, Yosef the demon said to me, if one drinks 2 cups, we demons kill him. If he drinks 4, we do not kill him. But this person who drank 4, we harm him. There is another difference between 2 and 4. With regard to one who drinks 2, whether he did so unwittingly or intentionally, we harm him. With regard to one who drinks 4, if he does it intentionally, yes, he is harmed. If he does so unwittingly, no, he will not be harmed. Now this is just one tiny piece. Again, I think I read 3 more pages, nearly 3 more pages of this conversation about how you count. What about if you had 1 cup of wine not sitting at the table, and then another cup of wine sitting at the table? Do you add them together? Does that make 2 cups? Or are they 2 separate incidents? What if some of the time you were drinking wine and some of the time you were drinking beer? Do you add them together, or are they 2 separate things and you count them separately? Now, there is an ancient superstition that carried across many things where you don't do things in pairs. You don't do, and sometimes it was extended, you don't do even numbers of things. But certainly you don't do things in pairs. So, one of the reasons this is relevant to something we do today is Passover Seder. How many cups of wine do we have? 4 cups, right? So first one's 4, okay, it's not 2, but how many do we have before the meal? 2. And how many after? Okay, so we could be in dangerous territory here, right? Depending on how you count. There is a 5th cup. What's the 5th cup? Right. Now there's all kinds of stories about why do we have Elijah's cup. There are many, many stories about why we have Elijah's cup. Elijah will come and answer. The one we hear most often is that when each of these cups is meant to be associated with a different phrase from Torah about how God redeemed us. And depending on how you parse it, are there 4 phrases or 5 phrases? That's actually a little bit of a reach when you look at the phrases. I have a feeling, and I actually know a rabbinic student who did her rabbinic thesis on this topic, and she brought this up. I have a feeling that this Talmudic text is the origins of the 5th cup, of Elijah's cup. I think it's to play safe. Even though we don't drink it, there's a 5th cup on the table, and so it's keeping the evil spirits away from us Seder night. I think that's what's going on. Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong. That she posited it. I think it's we have no proof. It's lost in the annals of time. There's no text that spells it out, he tells us. But when you see this text and you see that there's 2 more or 3 more pages of Talmud after this little paragraph that I gave you, that continues on to discuss how important it is, what you drink and how you count it. The idea that this would not have come up in the same era with the same rabbis who created the ritual of the Passover Seder is unfathomable to me. This is the same era. They would have been familiar with these superstitions and these fears, and it would have made its way into what we do in the Passover Seder and early stuff. So all kinds of interesting trivia we've learned tonight. Yes.
Certainly saying bad things come in threes. Could that
Not in Judaism. And actually, I don't, it would be interesting to look that up and see what is the origins of that. Certainly, it's not in Judaism, and I would not think it would be part of Christian thinking either, because the first 3 that comes to my mind is the Trinity. Why would that be a bad thing? Yeah. So I don't know the origins of that. Yeah, it's interesting.
But Shabbat candles we like too.
I like 3.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Most homes that I know
Like 2. Right. Yeah. So and maybe it's different to do with eating and drinking, although that's why I was fascinated when you talked about the number of visits to the Shiva house, because I knew about these texts to do with eating and drinking. It's not only drinking, it's also eating. It's like you should never have like 2 olives. You should have 1 or 3. Right. That's somewhere else. But I didn't know about it attributed to any other kind of behaviors outside of eating and drinking. So this is a new one on me, but yeah, you're right. The candlelight thing is different.
But those are the opposite. It's the good. The tablets are 2.
2, yeah.
And it's good.
Yes.
The candles are for good.
Right.
Wine is a potential
too much and get you into trouble.
It's a potential temptation.
Yes.
So you're either there for the 1 cup to be polite, or 3. Don't just say, maybe I'll have the second one.
Well, anyway, where this exactly comes from, I'm not sure, but it's fascinating. Okay, so 2 weeks' time, we're going to look at superstitions. I think this was important background, because if you've entered this world, you get a sense of how people are thinking in terms of demons and superstitions and keeping things at bay and incantations. This is an important foundation, because then we're going to look at rituals around death and dying, burial, birth, weddings, and Havdalah, saying goodbye to Shabbat. These are all places where things that we do today most likely have their origins in things that are grounded in this world of superstition and demons and evil spirits. I hope everyone sleeps well tonight.
Thank you so much.